Welcome to the seventh and final session of our study on the Apocrypha, the First Book of Maccabees. In this session, we will read and discuss chapters 14, 15, and 16. Jonathan is dead, and Simon has taken his place as military leader and high priest of Judah. The citadel has been captured, and the Judeans are celebrating. But there is more suspense in store. Other challengers are waiting in the wings to take over control of Judea and the temple. We begin with a prayer. O God, our Father, open our eyes and enlighten our minds as we study your word. So grant that our minds may know your truth and our hearts may feel your love, and then confirm and strengthen our wills that we may go out to live what we have learned. Through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen. So this is our last session. It's perhaps a good time to reiterate that I'm using multiple sources in this study. We have used the New Revised Standard Version of the Bible, which is not all that different from other translations. For example, early in chapter 15, the NRSV uses the term scoundrels, while the New American Bible Revised Edition uses the term villains. So there are differences, but for our purposes, they are generally not consequential. I've used Daniel Harrington's commentary, First and Second Maccabees, a part of the new Collegeville Bible Commentary series. I've also used the new Oxford Annotated Apocrypha, revised 4th edition. And I have used 1 Maccabees by John Bartlett, published by Sheffield Academic Press. Nearly all of the commentary provided in this study comes from one of those sources, certainly all of the on-target commentary. I may have made errors in interpreting some of the commentary I used, but I have not done so intentionally. It is also true that biblical scholars don't always agree on the proper interpretation of some biblical passages, so the dates may not always match up, or one commentator may infer different motives behind a particular action. 1 Maccabees was originally written in Hebrew and translated into Greek in the Septuagint. Various reconstructions of the original Hebrew have been attempted, but the original Hebrew version is presumed lost. One result is that various translators have made different assumptions about what the original Hebrew text might have said, and consequently there is some variation in the English translations available to the general reader. You may have noted that the commentary includes information not included in the scripture. For example, our commentators use the name Alexander Ballas because they have other sources that confirm that name, but our text simply refers to him as Alexander. In the text, Judas is referred to as Judas Maccabeus, but nowhere in this book do we find the whole family identified as the Maccabees, or for that matter, the Hasmoneans, although historically this family has been referred to as the Hasmonean dynasty. Nor does the text ever mention the name Hyrcanus, for the high priest we have come to know as John Hyrcanus, and who we read about in today's session. But we move to reading from chapters 14 through 16. So far in our study, we have learned how early in the 2nd century BCE, the Seleucid Empire took control of a large area near the eastern Mediterranean that included Judah. The Seleucid king Antiochus IV Epiphanes defiled the temple in Jerusalem, put up altars all over the land, and abolished observance of the Sabbath and circumcision. A priest by the name of Matthias rebelled against the Seleucid rulers. After his death in 165 BCE, his 5 sons took up the rebel cause, raised armies, and negotiated with various Seleucid kings and officials. Judas Maccabeus, an early military leader of the rebellion, won some decisive battles, but in 161 his forces were defeated and Judas was killed. Judas's brother, Jonathan, then took up the reins of leadership, and through shrewd political maneuvering was named high priest and advanced the cause of the Judeans against a string of Seleucid kings and pretenders to be kings. Jonathan, however, had been unable to remove the Seleucid troops from the citadel in Jerusalem, overlooking the temple. Jonathan was captured and ultimately killed by the Seleucid king Trypho in 142, and Simon was made commander of the military and the high priest. Simon captured the citadel in 141 and drove the Seleucid troops out of Jerusalem. So now we come to chapter 14. The year is now 140 BCE, and we begin with the first 3 verses. In the 172nd year, King Demetrius assembled his forces and marched into Media to obtain help, so that he could make war against Trypho. When King Arsaces of Persia and Media heard that Demetrius had invaded his territory, he sent one of his generals to take him alive. The general went and defeated the army of Demetrius and seized him and took him to Arsaces, who put him under guard. In 140 BCE, Demetrius II entered Media, where he was taken captive by King Arsaces, which was the dynastic name of Mithridates I, the Parthian king from 171 to 138 BCE. The author claims that Demetrius II went there to gain more military support for his struggle against Trypho. However, another reason was that the Parthians had seized the eastern part of the Seleucid Empire, including Babylon, and the Greeks and Macedonians left there needed his help. Arsaces treated him well and gave his daughter to him in marriage. The next verses take us away from the everyday action. We have a eulogy and praise of Simon. The first part of this poem describes his reign in time of peace and contentment for the people and lists his achievements. The second part celebrates Simon's exploits in terms largely taken from the various biblical passages. We read verses 4 through 15. The land had rest all the days of Simon. He sought the good of his nation. His rule was pleasing to them, as was the honor shown him all his days. To crown all his honors, he took Joppa for a harbor and opened a way to the isles of the sea. He extended the borders of his nation and gained full control of the country. He gathered a host of captives. He ruled over Gazara and Bethzur and the citadel, and he removed its uncleanliness from it. And there was none to oppose him. They tilled their land in peace. The ground gave its increase, and the trees of the plains their fruit. Old men sat in the streets. They all talked together of good things, and the youths put on splendid military attire. He supplied the towns with food and furnished them with means of defense until his renown spread to the ends of the earth. He established peace in the land, and Israel rejoiced with great joy. All the people sat under their own vines and fig trees, and there was none to make them afraid. No one was left in the land to fight them, and the kings were crushed in those days. He gave help to all the humble among his people. He sought out the law. He did away with all the renegades and outlaws. He made the sanctuary glorious and added to the vessels of the sanctuary. So verse 8 here is from Leviticus 26, verse 3 and 4. 14:9 is from Zechariah 8:4. 14:12 is from Micah 4:4. The renegades and outlaws in verse 14 are probably those Jews who had supported Antiochus back in 167. So we go on to verse 16. It was heard in Rome and as far away as Sparta that Jonathan had died, and they were deeply grieved when they heard that his brother Simon had become high priest in his stead, and that he was ruling over the country and the towns in it. They wrote to him on bronze tablets to renew with him the friendship and alliance that they had established with his brothers Judas and Jonathan, and these were read before the assembly in Jerusalem. So, when there was a change in leadership, it was customary to renew the alliances made in the past. The renewals of alliances probably took place shortly after Simon's ascension in 142. We go on to verse 20. This is a copy of the letter that the Spartans sent. The rulers in the city of the Spartans to the high priest Simon, and to the elders and the priests and the rest of the Jewish people, our brothers, greetings. The envoys who were sent to our people have told us about your glory and honor, and we rejoiced at their coming. We have recorded what they said in our public decrees as follows. Numanus, son of Antiochus, and Antipater, son of Jason, envoys of the Jews, have come to us to renew their friendship with us. It has pleased our people to receive these men with honor and to put a copy of their words in the public archives, so that the people of the Spartans may have a record of them, and they have sent a copy of this to the high priest Simon. So this is the letter that the Spartans had sent confirming the agreement produced by the recent visit of Numanus and Antipater. We go on to verse 24. After this, Simon sent Numanus to Rome with a large gold shield weighing 1,000 minas to confirm the alliance with the Romans. This gives the impression that Simon sent Numanus back to Rome with his gift of a large gold shield, verses 25 through 28. When the people heard these things, they said, "How shall we thank Simon and his sons? For he and his brothers in the house of his father have stood firm. They have fought and repulsed Israel's enemies and established its freedom. So they made a record on bronze tablets and put it on the pillars on Mount Zion." This is a copy of what they wrote. On the 18th day of Elul, in the 172nd year, which is the third year of the great high priest Simon, in Asaramo, in the great assembly of the priests and the people and the rulers of the nation and the elders of the country, the following was proclaimed to us. So Simon's work on behalf of the Jewish people was recognized in an official decree inscribed on bronze tablets and posted on Mount Zion. The decree is dated September 13th, 140 BCE. We read this inscription in the remainder of the chapter. So we start with verse 29 through 34. Since the wars occurred in this country, Simon, son of Matthias, a priest to the sons of Jorab, and his brothers exposed themselves to danger and resisted the enemies of their nation in order that their sanctuary and the law might be preserved. And they brought great glory to their nation. Jonathan rallied the nation, became their high priest, and was gathered to his people. When their enemies decided to invade their country and lay hands on their sanctuary, then Simon rose up and fought for his nation. He spent great sums of his own money. He armed the soldiers of his nation and paid them wages. He fortified the towns of Judah and Beth-zur on the border of Judea, where formerly the arms of the enemy had been stored, and he placed there a garrison of Jews. He also fortified Joppa, which is by the sea, and Gazara, which is on the borders of Azotus, where the enemy formerly lived. He settled Jews there and provided in those towns whatever was necessary for the restoration. So Simon is described as a great benefactor to his people, not only as military successes, but also in spending his own money to equip the army. We go on with verse 35. The people saw Simon's faithfulness and the glory that he had resolved to win for his nation, and they made him their leader and the high priest, because he had done all these things, and because of the justice and loyalty that he had maintained toward his nation. He sought in every way to exalt his people. In his days, things prospered in his hands, so that the Gentiles were put out of the country, as were also those in the city of David in Jerusalem, who had built themselves a citadel from which they used to sally forth and defile the environs of the sanctuary, doing great damage to its purity. He settled Jews in it and fortified it for the safety of the country and of the city, and he built the walls of Jerusalem higher. So here the inscription discusses his capture of the citadel. We go on with verse 38. In view of these things, King Demetrius confirmed him in the high priesthood, made him one of his friends, and paid him high honors, for he had heard that the Jews were addressed by the Romans as friends and allies and brothers, and that the Romans had received the envoys of Simon with honor. The remainder of this decree focuses on Simon's three official positions: military leader, high priest, and governor of the Jews. So we go on. The Jews and their priests have resolved that Simon should be their leader and high priest forever, until a trustworthy prophet should arise, and that he should be governor over them, and that he should take charge of the sanctuary and appoint officials over its tasks, and over the country and the weapons and the strongholds, and that he should take charge of the sanctuary, and that he should be obeyed by all, and that all contracts in the country should be written in his name, and that he should be clothed in purple and wear gold. None of the people or priests shall be permitted to nullify any of these decisions, to oppose what he says, or to convene an assembly in the country without his permission, or to be clothed in purple, or to put on a gold buckle. Whoever acts contrary to these decisions, or rejects any of them, shall be liable to punishment. In verse 41, a decree that Simon should be their leader and high priest forever until a trustworthy prophet should arise. We have read about prophets earlier, and apparently it's been a long time since the Jews have seen one, and don't expect to see one soon. We also have an admonition or warning to the people not to change any of these decisions. We go on with verse 46. All the people agreed to grant Simon the right to act in accordance with these decisions. So Simon accepted and agreed to be high priest and to be commander and entharch of the Jews and priests, and to be protector of them all. And they gave orders to inscribe this decree on bronze tablets, to put them in a conspicuous place in the precincts of the sanctuary, and to deposit copies of them in the treasury, so that Simon and his sons might have them. Simon accepted the three offices and the decree. It's often difficult to pinpoint the end of a revolution. A successful revolution results in a stable government and restoration of civil life. The transition to the new order is sometimes vague because one phase leads to another. One clear marker for the end of the Maccabean revolt was the capture of the citadel in Jerusalem by Simon in 141 BCE. This military installation had lasted a long time, 25 years, and caused the Maccabees and their supporters a good deal of trouble. Another marker was the concentration of military, religious, and political authority in one man, Simon, in 140. His rise to power gave Judea at least the semblance of a stable government and the restoration of civil life. It also turned Judea into an independent political entity. Yet the concentration of all power in the Maccabean family would eventually prove to be a seed of the revolution's undoing. The family soon fell victim to dynastic struggles that had long plagued the Seleucids and the Ptolemies. And a new era began when in 63 the Roman general Pompey had to intervene at Jerusalem to settle the family dispute among descendants of the Maccabees about who was to be the successor of Queen Salome Alexandra. We begin chapter 15. We increasingly see letters and proclamations in the second half of the book of the First Maccabees. Again, here in chapter 15, we start with a letter along with the new Antiochus. We read verses 1 through 9. Antiochus, son of King Demetrius, sent a letter from the islands of the sea to Simon, the priest and entharch of the Jews, and to all the nations. Its contents were as follows. King Antiochus to Simon, the high priest and entharch, and to the nation of the Jews, greetings. Whereas certain scoundrels have gained control of the kingdom of our ancestors, and I intend to lay claim to the kingdom so that I may restore it as it formerly was, and have recruited a host of mercenary troops, and have equipped warships, and intend to make a landing in the country so that I may proceed against those who have destroyed our country, and those who have devastated many cities in my kingdom. Now therefore I confirm to you all the tax remissions that the kings before me have granted you, and are released from all other payments from which they have released you. I permit you to mint your own coinage as money for your country, and I grant freedom to Jerusalem and the sanctuary. All the weapons that you have prepared and the strongholds that you have built and now hold shall remain yours. Every debt you owe to the royal treasury and any such future debts shall be canceled for you from henceforth and for all time. When we gain control of our kingdom, we will bestow great honor on you and your nation and the temple, so that your glory will become manifest in all the earth. Antiochus VII was the son of Demetrius I and the brother of Demetrius II. That would make him the grandson of Seleucus VI and the great-grandson of Antiochus III. Because he grew up in Side in Pamphylia, he was known as Sidetes. He complains here about certain scoundrels who have gained control of the kingdom. He's clearly talking about Trypho and possibly Alexander Ballus and his son Antiochus VI. Although at this point Alexander is surely dead and Antiochus VI may be dead as well. Trypho is the imminent threat, and he has no dynastic claim whatsoever to the throne that he now sits upon. In the letter he refers to Simon as the ethnarch. Ethnarch simply means governor of a province or of a people. In this case, Simon is the governor of the Jewish people in Judea. Antiochus was simply asking for Simon's support in this letter. We note that he gives Simon permission to issue his own coinage, which would have been another sign of Judean independence. We go on to verse 10 through 14. In the 174th year, Antiochus set out and invaded the land of his ancestors. All the troops rallied to him, so that there were only a few with Trypho. Antiochus pursued him, and Trypho came in his flight to Dor, which is by the sea, for he knew that troubles had converged on him, and his troops had deserted him. So Antiochus encamped against Dor, and with him were 120,000 warriors and 8,000 cavalry. He surrounded the town, and the ships joined the battle from the sea. He pressed the town hard from land and sea, and permitted no one to leave it or enter it. In 138, Antiochus VII Sidetes, at the age of 20, launched his invasion from the island of Rhodes. When Trypho learned of his move, he fled to Dor, a port city 9 miles north of Caesarea Maritima and south of Mount Carmel. There Trypho found himself trapped, facing a large army by land and a blockade off the seacoast. We go to verse 15. Then Numanus and his companions arrived from Rome with letters to the kings and countries in which the following was written. Lucius, consul of the Romans, to King Ptolemy, greetings. The envoys of the Jews have come to us as our friends and allies to renew our ancient friendship and alliance. They had been sent by the high priest Simon and by the Jewish people, and have brought a gold shield weighing 1,000 minas. We therefore have decided to write to the kings and countries that they should not seek their harm, or make war against them and their cities and their country, or make alliances with those who make war against them. And it has seemed good to us to accept the shield from them. Therefore, if any scoundrels have fled to you from their country, hand them over to the high priest Simon, so that he may punish them according to their law. So this letter could have been from Lucius Catulus Metellus, who was consul in 142, or from Lucius Calpurnius Piso, who was consul in 140 to 139. It's addressed to King Ptolemy, who was Ptolemy VIII, Eugenetus II, who reigned from 145 to 116 in Egypt. So we go on with verse 22. The council wrote the same things to King Demetrius and to Attalus and Arathanes and Arsaces and to all the countries and to Samsames and to the Spartans and to Delos and to Mandos and to Sicon and to Cara and to Samos and to Pamphylia and to Lycia and to Halicarnassus and to Rhodes and to Phaselis and to Cos and to Side and to Ardis and Gortna and Snendus and Cyprus and Crene. And they also sent a copy of these things to the high priest Simon. The Romans were willing to make treaties, but slow to follow up on them unless it was suited their interest. In the next century, the Romans began to take much more direct control of Judea and the whole of Palestine until the independence that the Maccabees had gained was lost again. We go on to verse 25. King Antiochus besieged Dor for the second time, continually throwing his forces against it and making engines of war, and he shut Trypho up and kept him from going out or in. And Simon sent to Antiochus 2,000 picked troops to fight for him, and silver and gold and a large amount of military equipment. But he refused to receive them and broke all the agreements he formerly had made with Simon and became estranged from him. He sent to him Antiochus, one of his friends, to confer with him, saying, "You hold control of Joppa and Gazara and the citadel in Jerusalem. They are cities of my kingdom. You have devastated their territory, and you have done great damage in the land, and you have taken possession of many places in my kingdom. Now then, hand over the cities that you have seized and the tribute money of the places that you have conquered outside the borders of Judea, or else pay me 500 talents of silver for the destruction that you have caused, and 500 talents more for the tribute money or of the cities. Otherwise we will come and make war on you." Antiochus probably felt that victory was within his grasp. He had Trypho pinned down and saw no reason to share spoils with Simon and the Judeans, so he sent one of his friends to Simon. Verse 32. So Antiochus, the king's friend, came to Jerusalem, and when he saw the splendor of Simon and the sideboard with its gold and silver plate, and his great magnificence, he was amazed. When he reported to him the king's message, Simon said to him in reply, "We have neither taken foreign land nor seized foreign property, but only the inheritance of our ancestors, which at one time had been unjustly taken by our enemies. Now that we have the opportunity, we are firmly holding the inheritance of our ancestors. As for Joppa and Gazara, which you demand, they were causing great damage among the people and to our land. For them we will give you 100 talents. Antiochus did not answer him a word, but returned in wrath to the king and reported to him these words, and also the splendor of Simon and all that he had seen. And the king was very angry. Simon claimed that these cities and territories were part of the Jews' ancestral heritage and were in enemy hands only for a time. He based this claim on the biblical promises about the land of Israel as well as the international Greek law. He went on to explain that he had taken Joppa and Gazara only because they were harming his people. He nevertheless agreed to give Antiochus 100 talents as compensation for them. We read verse 37 through the end of the chapter. Meanwhile, Trypho embarked on a ship and escaped to Arsaces. Then the king made Sendebus commander-in-chief of the coastal country and gave him troops of infantry and cavalry. He commanded them to encamp against Judea and to build up Kedron and fortify its gates and to make war on the people. But the king pursued Trypho. So Sendebus came to Jamna and began to provoke the people and invade Judea and take the people captive and kill them. He built up Kedron and stationed horsemen and troops there so that they might go out and make raids along the highways of Judea as the king had ordered him. So Trypho managed to escape from Dor and travel to Arsaces with Antiochus hot on his heels. Before he left town, Antiochus put Sendebus in charge of his army in Palestine, and Sendebus made several incursions into Judea with great success. This concludes chapter 15. We go now to chapter 16 and the conclusion of the first book of Maccabees. The year is now 138 BCE, and we read the first 3 verses. John went up from Gazara and reported to his father Simon what Sendebus had done. And Simon called in his 2 eldest sons, Judas and John, and said to them, "My brothers and I and my father's house have fought the wars of Israel from our youth until this day, and things have prospered in our hands, so that we have delivered Israel many times. But now I have grown old, and you, by heaven's mercy, are mature in years. Take my place and my brothers, and go out and fight for our nation, and may the help that comes from heaven be with you." Maccabean outpost that was closest to the area of Sendebus activity was Gazara, where Simon's son, John Hyrcanus, was in charge. Simon gave John and Judas a little pep talk and told them to go out and fight for our nation. So they did, verses 4 through 10. So John chose out of the country 20,000 warriors and cavalry, and they marched against Sendebus and camped for the night in Modin. Early in the morning they started out and marched into the plain, where a large force of infantry and cavalry was coming to meet them, and a stream lay between them. Then he and his army lined up against them. He saw that the soldiers were afraid to cross the stream, so he crossed over first. And when his troops saw him, they crossed over after him. Then he divided the army and placed the cavalry in the center of the infantry, for the cavalry of the enemy were very numerous. They sounded the trumpets, and Sendebus and his army were put to flight. Many of them fell wounded, and the rest fled into the stronghold. At that time Judas, the brother of John, was wounded, but John pursued them until Sendebus reached Kedron, which he had built. They also fled into the towers that were in the fields of Azotus, and John burned it with fire, and about 2,000 of them fell. Then he returned to Judea safely. So we hear for the first time that John's army includes a cavalry horseman. We notice that they stopped by the family's ancestral home, Modin, on the way to battle. By taking the initiative in crossing the stream, John followed the pattern set by his uncle Judas way back in chapter 5. John was victorious in the battle, although his brother Judas was wounded. We remember Jonathan had burned Azotus in chapter 10. Well, John burned it again here in chapter 16. We go on verses 11 through 17. Now Ptolemy, son of Abubus, had been appointed governor over the plain of Jericho. He had a large store of silver and gold, for he was son-in-law of the high priest. His heart was lifted up. He determined to get control of the country and made treacherous plans against Simon and his sons to do away with them. Now Simon was visiting the towns of the country and attending to their needs, and he went down to Jericho with his sons Matthias and Judas in the 177th year, in the 11th month, which is the month of Shabbat. The son of Abubus received them treacherously in a little stronghold called Dak, which he had built. He gave them a great banquet and hid men there. When Simon and his sons were drunk, Ptolemy and his men rose up, took their weapons, rushed in against Simon in the banquet hall, and killed him and his 2 sons, as well as some of his servants. So he committed an act of great treachery and returned evil for good. Simon had appointed his son-in-law Ptolemy, the son of Abubus, to be governor of the area around Jericho. But apparently Ptolemy was a bit of a plotter and a schemer, and planned to kill Simon and his sons to take control of Judea. So in the winter of 134, he arranged a banquet for Simon and 2 of his sons, Judas and Matthias, at a fortress called Dak, 3 miles northwest of Jericho. When Simon and his sons were drunk, he had them killed, so he committed an act of great treachery and returned evil for good. We go to verses 18 through 22. Then Ptolemy wrote a report about these things and sent it to the king, asking him to send troops to aid him and to turn over to him the towns and the country. He sent other troops to Gazara to do away with John. He sent letters to the captains asking them to come to him so that he might give them silver and gold and gifts. And he sent other troops to take possession of Jerusalem and the Temple Hill. But someone ran ahead and reported to John at Gazara that his father and brothers had perished, and that he had sent men to kill you also. When he heard this, he was greatly shocked. He seized the men who came to destroy him and killed them, for he had found out that they were seeking to destroy him. Ptolemy's report to the king suggests that he expected Antiochus VII to come to his aid with military help to help him fend off Simon's supporters and appoint him to be Simon's replacement as ruler over Judea. His plot to kill John Hyrcanus was foiled when John learned what had happened to Simon and his brothers at Dak. John was ready when his would-be murderers arrived, and he put them to death. Verses 23 and 24. The rest of the acts of John and his wars with the brave deeds that he did, and the building of the walls that he completed, and his achievements, are written in the annals of this high priesthood from the time he became high priest after his father. So John took over the Jewish high priesthood from his father Simon. He also served as the military and political leader in Judea from 134 to 104. This epilogue looks quite similar to the one about Judah's career in chapter 9, verse 22. They both imitate summaries that may be familiar from 1st and 2nd Kings. Antiochus VII did in fact invade Judea in 134 BCE and probably tore down some of the walls that John built. The annals of the high priesthood described in verse 24 were probably lost when the Romans destroyed the temple in 70 CE. In any event, they are not available to us today. This book was probably written during the latter stages of John's priesthood, or perhaps shortly after it ended. So here we end the book of First Maccabees. Our final discussion session will be Sunday, February 27th. The First Book of Maccabees gives us an historical account of a major rebellion of the Jewish people that we read nothing about anywhere in our older New Testaments. For hundreds of years prior to the mid-2nd century BCE, Judah or Israel had been vassal states, paying tribute to some king or emperor from a foreign land. The Jews were perhaps in danger of being Hellenized out of existence in 165 BCE when a family of priests we have come to label the Maccabees rose up in rebellion to save their temple, their ancient law code, and their way of life. For about 100 years they remained an independent political and religious entity. As always, I appreciate your comments and suggestions, which you can give me directly, or you can email them to online.classes@northgateumc.org. Thank you.